This is Gary Bombalicki and another edition of the Shooting Star program. And today, we're going to have special guest, Patrick Thayer. Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Shooting Star program with Gary the Bomber Bombalicki. And I'm pleased to introduce Patrick Thayer from the Friendship Church of Yorba Belinda. And he is the Director of Security for the Friendship Church. How are you today?
I'm really very well, Gary. Thank you for having me on.
Well, thanks for joining us. And I was real excited about talking to you today because it's kind of timely for us to have just this conversation about what's happening out there in the world, especially with the area of houses of worship and security, because there's a lot of people out there that are aware that, you know, with all the terrorist shootings that are happening throughout our country, which are very unfortunate, it's a reality that we have to really look at. And when I met you, I was really fascinated with your extensive background and experience, and then how it couples together with what you're doing with the churches and especially your own congregations you belong to. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, that's fantastic, Gary. Yes, I am currently the Director of Security at Friends Church, Yorba Belinda, part of the Friends denomination through the southwest of the United States. I have had a little career in law enforcement. I recently retired after doing 30-plus years with a local law enforcement agency here in Orange County, California. During my career, I was blessed to be able to work almost every assignment in the organization, and that just gave me the ability to understand people a little better and be able to lead teams. One of my passions is leadership and mentoring and trying to take an idea or an organization or a thought to the next level. So when I retired, I was approached by my executive pastors at Friends Church Yorba Belinda, where my wife and my family have been attending for well over 20 years now. And they asked me to formalize some training and formalize some procedures for staff to just make our places a little bit harder of targets from what they normally are on a Sunday morning or a Saturday night.
Well, a lot of people don't realize the type of planning that it takes to be able to identify what you need to do to keep everybody safe. And when I came and visited you, I noticed that the campus was rather new. And you had mentioned to me that you had some input on some of the things that happen in the planning stages to be able to keep your congregation a little safer.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Gary. You know, most houses of worship, and I'm careful to choose that word because we are in Orange County. We are developing a coalition of houses of worship. So it's not just Christians, it's not just Jews, it's not just Muslims. We're all coming together at the table and talking about how we can keep our congregation safe, no matter what your faith denomination is. So again, back to what you said, most churches and most buildings that churches are in are old. You know, there's not a lot of new construction when it comes to building worship houses. And so with that in mind, if you think back, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago when some of these things were built, and even longer than that, they weren't concerned about active shooters. They weren't concerned about people coming in and doing violent crimes or trying to steal from the congregation, because that wasn't the way life was back then. So those of us that are in this field are now having to adjust and adapt to what we have, and all while balancing the fact that we are a house of worship. We are a place that should be welcoming to people. We're a place that should have easy access to get in and worship or pray or do what you need to do. So it's quite a little bit of a balancing act in trying to get that done and trying to stay true to your beliefs and try to maintain a place that people can feel safe when they visit.
Well, one of the techniques that you were telling me about is, while I was visiting you in the parking lot, you had an entrance at one place and an entrance at the other place, and that you work with your congregation to be able to help you and help everyone else identify the people that are coming to your house of worship. And tell us about that, because that really fascinated me, because I don't know if this has been happening for some time or this is something that's relatively new. And also, how does, like, the Blowback laser trainer we make here, how does that work within the worshiping community?
Well, specifically what you're talking about is something that I teach when I go around to different congregations all over Southern California, Nevada, and Arizona as well. And I talk about an onion approach. The layers of an onion is the easiest metaphor that I can give to people to understand what I'm talking about. You're dealing with an army of volunteers. Most congregations do not have security teams. Most congregations, anywhere from 50 to 500 people at the most, I'd say that's the majority of congregations. You're running on very, very little budget, if you even will, in regards to safety and security. So the approach that we take is we want to have a culture of safety and security that permeates all of my volunteer groups. And we're blessed to have a parking team ministry, a greeter ministry, an usher ministry, a prayer team ministry at Friends Church Yorba Linda and our Friends denomination. So what I try to do is I try to just slowly integrate safety thinking, forward thinking, progressive thinking, risk management thinking to those folks. And you truly need to do it in a real systematic and slow way. The analogy I use quite often is you don't turn a battleship on a dime. So I just talk to them about how their roles can play in assisting me and maybe identifying somebody that might be in a bad place, where they might need someone to talk to, where something might manifest itself in a way that they're bringing some mental illness into the game, and we have different outlets to assure those people some assistance and some help through the church and through other organizations. So to do that, to get specific to your question, is I tell, for instance, my parking team, those guys are incredible servants of our church and great volunteers, and they know our parking lot like the back of their hand.
I bet they do.
They do, Gary. They know exactly where every family parks, because we're all creatures of habit.
Same spot every week.
Yes, sir, exactly. So I tell them what I want them to do is I want them to key in on the things that are not normal. They know what normality is on any given Saturday night or Sunday morning. They know the normal flow of things. So when something strikes them as odd, something strikes them as unusual, that's what I want them to key on. And truly I want them to engage a person they don't know, a new visitor, and welcome them to our church and see what reaction you get from them. Hopefully it's a normal reaction with a big smile and, hey, where do I find the coffee? And give them assistance. But there's also opportunities that maybe they encounter somebody that might not have the best of intentions when they're on our parking lot, and that might manifest itself very quickly with simply one of my parking team guys asking them a question. I have an example of that I can tell you about.
Sure.
Just this past Christmas, during one of our Christmas services where we had 2,000 people in our worship center, our parking team was out finishing up their parking duties, and a person came in kind of driving kind of fast, which is unusual, driving a truck that he parked on a red curb, which was highly unusual. Guy got out of the car. He seemed a little hot, slammed his door. He was wearing bathing suit, shorts, and a tank top, and it was Christmas Eve services, and
right,
he was marching towards the front doors of the church. I would consider that unusual. Thank goodness my parking team did as well. They stopped him in the parking lot and said, hey, can we help you? He was sweating and upset, and he was demanding to see the pastors. And, of course, something's up. So I was notified quickly via a radio system that we have that's really low budget, but it works great. I was out in the parking lot in about 2 minutes. I was able to, number one, listen to the man's concerns, able to pray with the man, able to offer him solutions to what he needed, that he felt he needed done. I was able to get him back into his car and off of our property in about 15 minutes.
That's pretty impressive.
And it took place in our parking lot, not in our lobby, not in our worship center, not in our pastor's office. And it was because my parking team, my first layer of defense, found something unusual.
Right. All it takes is one little thing, and then the rest can balloon from there.
It does. And so we continue that onion approach as you get closer to our worship center. Obviously, we have greeters and we have pastoral staff that are outside to greet people, welcome them to church. And those are the times if you see someone crying or someone upset, walking in, well, man, that's the time to engage them right then and there. See what we can do. See how we can come alongside them. Find out what's going on. My God, Jesus called people with tremendous trauma and tremendous trouble to his church. He called them to his altar, and that's exactly where they should be going when you have difficulties, is you should be allowed to visit your church and talk to your pastors and do all those types of things. That pain and that trauma sometimes manifests itself with people in a way that can be scary at times for those of us that aren't going through that. And so truly we need to be welcoming and kind and gracious and deal with grace and humility as we deal with those people.
How rewarding is this for you? I mean, this is unbelievable that you can take your experience that you had in the last 30-some years in law enforcement and apply it to Lord Jesus Christ. That's pretty exceptional.
Well, it is, and I got to tell you that, there's different ways of doing law enforcement. By no means do I have the recipe for success. I can just only speak for myself on the way that I carried myself during my career. I got myself in and out of a lot of tough situations through just communication with people. More often than not, people just want to be they want to be heard. They want you to give them the value of listening to what's going on with them, and they want respect.
Well, the one question I want to ask you is that, in everything I've done in life, it's kind of a relatability thing that I found over a period of time, and that is when you're introducing something new and you're talking about something new, a lot of the people answer, well, you know what? We've been doing it this way for the last 50 years. We don't need to change right now. And what would you say to other worship organizations out there that are thinking about security in their organization? What kind of advice would you give them to people to say, you know what, we're okay, everything's going to be okay, let's do nothing?
Yeah, I think that what's going on in the United States and around the world tells you that you can't stick your head in the sand. I truly think that the things that are going on in our nation that are hitting the nightly news and getting major press coverage really scares people, and it makes people think about how they want to go about living their lives differently. Now, it's important, I think, for you to have a balanced approach. That's the way I think about it. There's value in being able to greet people. There's value in being able to meet people where they need to be met in regards to counseling or regards to prayer time with them. But I really think it's just important to address that at any level that you're in. But it's equally as important to have the right people in those positions, because truly you have to lead with grace and humility in church. I've got some law enforcement people that attend my church that frankly they ask if they can be on our team, and after meeting with them for a little while, I just pray with them and say, hey, I just don't think right now would be a good time for you, because they're just in a different stage of life. We all go through different stages of life, and they're just not quite ready to lead with grace and humility over maybe more of a staunch law enforcement approach.
Sure.
I hope that answers your question.
Well, that's a great answer. When I started the Blowback laser trainer, I had no idea that I would ever be talking to anybody about how to use a handgun in firearms safety training for protection of public places, especially houses of worship. And it's just amazing how things circle in life and they end up the way they are in the journey that we were on. That's how we got to meet. So it's fascinating. I'm not excited or happy that we have to do all this, but at the same time, it's better to be on the offense than on the defense.
That is true, and to answer your specific question about your product, when I saw it, I thought to myself, well, I in any major metropolitan area that has church safety or security, that does have people that have firearms in your sanctuary at times, be it law enforcement that you know about, or just be it people in your congregation that might have a concealed carry permit. My specific ministry is men and women that are currently in law enforcement and that are hired with CCWs from law enforcement. So I saw it as an opportunity of, boy, this is easier way for us to practice target acquisition, practice weapon retention, and more importantly, the most important thing to me, I told you as well, is that I'm a big believer in, if you're going to take the gun out, you got to take it out safely, and you need to be trained on how that's going to take a look when you're sitting in a chair in a crowded worship center.
Sure.
So I want my team to be able to evaluate the situation they have, and if it calls for them having to pull a weapon, I want them to be doing it in the safest manner they can. So the Blowback trainer gave me the opportunity to take a look at how my team would react and gain target acquisition and be able to hit a target. And so we did some initial training with it and found it to be useful. And the thing I liked about it is it's not drawing a lot of attention to what you're doing. The cost is certainly effective in the sense that the CO2 cartridges are certainly affordable, and you get a lot for what you're using it for. So I see it as a tool that can be used at many different places, and I think it can be something that can save some people some money and gain some valuable training.
Well, thank you for that. We really appreciate that. And we have about a minute left, so why don't you tell everybody, if they want to get a hold of you, how would they be able to do that?
My email address is pretty simple. It's my first name, Patrick, Patrick. My initial of my last name, T. So it's Patrick T at friends.church. Patrick T at friends.church.
Well, Patrick, it's been a real pleasure having you on our Shooting Star program today. It was a totally different twist than we've ever talked about on this program before. And I think that a lot of people will be interested in what you have to say. And thank you for being on the program.
Thank you, Mr. Bombalicki. It's a pleasure myself.
All right. Thank you. Well, everybody, thank you for listening to another edition of the Shooting Star program. If you want to know more about the Blowback Laser Trainer, just go to www.blowbacklasertrainer.com. That's blowbacklasertrainer.com, and we'll see you again next time.